money, like they're paid $9,000 a month.
Good afternoon and welcome into the Senate Committee on Government Operations meeting on Thursday, February 27th, 2025. So we have one more day in the month and one more day in this week, and we have town meeting off next week. Jillian has reminded me that daylight savings will go into effect at March 9th, I believe you said, something like that. So it will be lighter even later, which is at the expense of the early morning hour, but that's okay. At any rate, at one point we had scheduled in Rebecca Samroff, who's a deputy commissioner, the Department of Taxes, as sort of a meet and greet kind of one-on-one. Hey, how are you? Here's what we do sort of thing. I think you were ill at some point and couldn't come in, and then we got sort of waylaid with some other things. So I feel like we should have been doing this back in January, but welcome in, and let's go around the room with introductions. Senator Hart.
Sure. Senator Larry Hart, Orange County.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Sitting here soon will be Senator Allison Clarkson from the Windsor District. I'm Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Jillian, committee assistant.
Connie Bielski, Chittenden Central. Nice to see you again.
And Rebecca White from the Windsor County District.
And
So Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Hi. Good to see you. For the record, Rebecca Samroff, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Taxes. And I have like a very high level PowerPoint, department intro I prepared, which I gave to you very last minute. So I don't know if folks have it up on their page. I'm happy to like hop on a Zoom and drive.
Yeah,
that's helpful
I
too.
sent you a Zoom.
Okay,
link
great.
if you
I
want
just
to-
got on my email. Sorry, like the theme of the day is
That's okay.
step behind.
Find your earring.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I know.
did you listen?
I did.
She was
I'm
running
leaving
over.
the one in because maybe
Oh my God, it's fabulous.
for the camera. Yeah.
It would have to be snowing too, of course.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
looks like we're in a snow globe out there.
It's so beautiful out.
It is.
Like,
Hopefully it's also beautiful to drive in later.
Yeah.
The drive here was messy. Okay.
Yeah, whatever. That's what. Well, that's. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, so I'm gonna try to share it this way.
I gave Jason Malucci a copy of this, so he's well aware of it. And I told Jen Morrison coming in, we'd be voting on it.
Yeah. And so she's like her. I'll be right back. Sure.
Here.
Get through.
Sorry for the delay here. I was going to try to share the presentation without having you guys see my helpful notes. Oh, maybe I don't get to see them either.
I can also share from my screen.
Oh, would you be willing to do that? That would sure. Awesome. I'm so sorry. Here, let me stop sharing. This will be an exciting testimony for me to give because honestly, we've had a recent leadership transition at the tax department. Our longtime commissioner, Craig Bolio, moved to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with his family. And he's usually the one that gives these inspiring department overviews. I'm usually like in on the more wonky stuff. So this will be like a little new territory for me. Hopefully I'll do the department justice. We do have a new commissioner, Commissioner Joel Dice, who just started at the end of last week, had a pre-planned trip with his family this week, and we'll be kind of like back in earnest after town meeting week, or town meeting day, I should say. So that's the leadership picture, but yeah, very excited to talk about the Department of Taxes, who we are. This is a great slide to be on. Our mission statement, I think, says a lot about who we are as a department. Our mission is to serve Vermonters. Those first words are really operative to us, by administering our tax laws fairly and efficiently to help taxpayers understand and comply with their state tax obligations. We'll kind of like get into this as we move through the slides. Maybe actually we can move into the next one right now. we had a mission statement for a long time, but didn't have core values or goals until recently. And I guess by recently now, it probably was like 2022 that we went through this exercise of creating these. But that was like 2021, I guess it was at the end of the year. We were kind of picking our head up after the pandemic when we, like many departments in state government, had really shifted focus from our normal operations to like, really laser focus on helping the state deal with, like everything that was going on. So for us, that meant giving out federal funds kind of via the same mechanism that we send out tax credits. So that was kind of like a novel use of our tools and system and staff. And that was just like a really cool experience for us as a department to kind of like, we usually have our divisions that are all working in tandem and, pretty well together, but just kind of having this like kind of North Star that we're all like really focused on. And once we picked our heads up after that project and like the success and kind of like the good vibes that instilled in the department, and they're like, we kind of need our own North Star, even when things aren't in an emergency management context. So we went through a really cool process of generating department core values that are like much more than window dressing, I would say, in our department. It's like we really use these to help like me at the leadership level make decisions at the directors meetings and that level. We're talking about these all the time, and then supervisors and staff are like very, very bought into these as well. So it's a lot about who we are and the success that we have as a department. I'm just taking a break to breathe. Yeah, so the first one, service, is like by far the most key. Like we really see service as a massive part of being successful in our mission to administer taxes, because for better or worse, the U.S. tax system and Vermont's tax system is mostly a voluntary system. It's like we're not out there finding your dollars. We're counting on people to voluntarily, pay what's owed. Part of that is understanding what's owed, which is very complicated. In the world of taxes, it's not a straightforward zone. So we want to just make sure that we're, really available to help Vermonters like walk through the complexity of the tax code, be there and be available. And that's, that kind of service mindset is really important to us. Because it's also not just collecting revenue that we do, but we also manage some pretty big benefit programs. And Vermont's tax code is also, holds a number of like really generous tax credits that target vulnerable Vermonters or lower income Vermonters, which we have the pleasure of administering as well. So, we see it as a real service is a huge part of what we do. And we're all, have deep public servant mindsets, I would say, which is great. Integrity also super key. Like this is, relates to both like, keeping the data secure that we receive from folks. Our whole, bread and butter is like really sensitive financial data from taxpayers. So, we really take security and integrity of that data seriously. This also relates to collecting the correct amount of tax and not the most amount of tax. Like that's absolutely not our mission or our goal. Like a big part of integrity standard. And then also just like the way we relate to each other, holding ourselves accountable. We have like a culture where it is absolutely fine to acknowledge, admit mistakes and work with your team to fix them. It's very important for what we do. Of course, like very complicated policy areas and, a lot of that specific taxpayer cases. And it just, makes sense to have that type of work environment for us. A lot of trust within staff. Growth is another one of our core values. This isn't relating to growth of revenue. This is more about
You could have that.
we could have that, yeah, but that is up to policymakers. You missed the part where I said collecting the right amount of revenue and not the most amount of revenue. But we really like find growth within the department for our staff, for example, to be really key to our success. These are all very interwoven, as you'll find with my somewhat like rambling description of them, but like it makes a huge difference on the level of customer service to have the people answering the phones be like very seasoned subject matter experts. So it's not like when you call, first of all, I should say, when you call most tax departments and certainly the IRS, you rarely get a human. In Vermont, the most our wait times are ever, including like in the height of tax season or like in the 5-minute range. It's really great. And like we've, sometimes these values are kind of like at odds with each other or, or in conflict with each other. So like, I guess this is all kind of within service, but a couple of years ago, we made the decision to actually take our phones offline on Wednesdays. So it's one day that these, same subject matter experts that are responsible for processing all the tax returns that are coming in, doing the important tax work, have the day to just focus on that job, because every other day of the week, they're also fielding calls from taxpayers and making sure that there's, someone that can answer your question is the one picking up the call. So that's a huge part of the service we provide, and this growth goal is hugely supportive of that, because people really, I think, find the department as somewhere where you can have a growth trajectory. And with subject matter that's complicated, it's just it pays off in dividends every year of experience you have. So, we're not looking ideally to be somewhere that someone, lands for a couple of years and then moves on, although that certainly happens. We really pride ourselves on being a place where you can grow a solid career. And I feel our outgoing commissioner, Craig Bolio, is a perfect example of that. He started as a temp in his 20s and, left commissioner 14 years later. I myself started about 10 years ago as a data analyst for the department. I was in and out a couple times, but
That's when I first met.
I know, when you're my community, absolutely. And our chief operating officer, Andrew Stein, kind of the last of our leadership triad, he also joined the data team, in years past, then left to be the deputy at the auditor's office before coming back to tax. So that's something else that we love to see, and see often people leaving the department to go, sow their oats in other areas of state government, then often coming back. It was a story for Andrew and I. It's a story for many other tax employees, and we love that also. And then community is our last one. We have a really good thing going at the department right now. We have the employee engagement stats to back it up. Could not be more pleased with that. I should have printed that out to have handy, but actually, I think I made a slide about it, so I won't go too far into that. But we're just at a really cool, I think, moment of growth at the tax department. When I joined 10 years ago, it was a much different vibe internally. I think we were much more siloed, much different, vibe with the community. I think at that point, as legislators, folks were probably hearing a lot more complaints about what it was like interacting with the tax department. We'll get to this in further slides, but we get hardly any complaints these days. And I get far more emails of kudos for frontline employees than I do complaints, which is just amazing from a leader's perspective.
You should get kudos. I mean, we send, because we can't really get involved in tax issues with our constituents with you, we do defer all our, and refer them to the what's his name? The
Taxpayer advocate?
That's my brain is frozen. I have only gotten people are so grateful, and they're helpful. They pick up the phone. They're helpful. They problem solve. It is so, people are so grateful. So I actually have only seen that improve, and thank you on behalf of all of our constituents. That's great.
Thank you so much. That's amazing feedback.
Because they call with trepidation. I mean, they're all.
Yeah, it's not the story you'd expect to hear about a tax department. Which I know we're just keep patting myself on the back, but I will advance on to the next slide of just our goals. I think, we talked a lot about service, but one of our goals is to be a model of service-oriented tax administration nationally. And, as I mentioned about from the phone call experience to just the level of service you get when you get a member of the tax department on the phone. I really think that we are there, and I get that reconfirmed when I talk to other leaders at these national conferences, just about what's possible at their department. Reducing the tax gap is our second goal. The tax gap refers to the difference between the amount of taxes that should have been paid and the amount of taxes that are paid. This is something that's studied. I don't think quite annually. I think the last report the IRS did was from 2019, actually. But the IRS estimates that their tax gap is about 14%, meaning that for every dollar that they should be collecting, they're getting 85.5 cents, or 85.8 cents was what that report said. If you scale, it's really hard to do tax gap analysis because you don't know what you don't know. But if you scale that estimated delta to Vermont, that would be about $300 million, which we could still out there. Yeah, certainly.
That is helping us grow our revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. So, reducing the tax gap includes both promoting voluntary compliance, which is often just through helping people understand what they're supposed to do, as well as ensuring that we're, effectively and fairly addressing compliance issues or situations where, it's not being paid or reported voluntarily. So that's, the work of our compliance division, which I'll get into when we get into more organizational stuff. But I think the big takeaway on this is like the importance of voluntary compliance, which we'll get into more. And our last goal to promote a healthy organizational culture that helps our employees thrive. That's really, related to that culture core value of ours, really related to, the value we see in people really building their careers at the department. And ties into all of our other goals. So I will, the next slide, I think, is the one I was most excited about. Yes, our most recent employee engagement results. These are just some snippets of our employee engagement survey results from this year. This is a survey that DHR sends around to all departments. We really focus on participation in this survey. It's like, we don't say, participate and give us 5 stars. We just want to make sure it's a really robust data gathering tool for us as leaders, because, it's like the questions like get much more refined than this, and we can really use it to like narrow in on where employees are feeling like could be doing better and needing support. So another big piece of our annual push for employees to do this engagement survey is making sure folks know like what actions we've taken based on past survey results. So like, I should have had some of these examples better prepared, but ones I can think about off the top of my head is that we didn't have like the best rates of supervisors doing their annual performance evaluations. So we really focus on that now, and we have much higher compliance with that state policy. And there was like concerns a number of years ago about safety of the building, so we really restructured a lot of the physical plant aspects around employee safety. We have like our tax wing, we have a guard that's now down there all the time in our lobby. Certain doors are locked that used to be open. We have our taxpayer window is right by the front door, which is very accessible to taxpayers.
Yeah,
but
it used to be, you had to go on the second floor.
Yeah. So like keeping people in that lobby area, unless they're going to have a meeting with a staff member, is kind of how we manage that now. And so those are just some examples of things we focused on from this. But yeah, I'll just read through these because they're exciting. 98% of employees believe the work they perform is linked to the department meeting its goals and missions. Very mission-driven organization, and that number, like I feel like can be in high. It's really awesome. 92% of employees say their colleagues are committed to doing good work. That's awesome. 86% of employees say they enjoyed the day-to-day of their jobs. That's the one that I imagine might be especially surprising when you think about the tax department, But we're ahead of the state average on 68 of the 72 questions. And we also improved year over year on 87% of the repeated questions in this year's survey.
Is there some kind of competition, interstate agency that has a state average?
This is all published
from the agency of administration.
Yeah, effectively, yes, actually, like, in Craig's last week, he was asked to come speak to the Agency of Natural Resources about why we're so successful in employee engagement. We've spoken at cabinet meetings about it. It's like we are like a little, we're like employee engagement celebrities, yes, within the Agency of Administration. So it's just something that we as a leadership team have really focused on. I mentioned our outgoing commissioner's like personal background of starting as a temp and being at the department for 14 years, just having the experience himself of growing as, he wanted to be in public service, had no idea he wanted to be a tax professional, much less commissioner, he just really finds it super important to encourage employees to have.
Well, my dear, you're still
the best time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I never thought I'd be a leadership too. That's a really good point. I thought I was just a nerdy numbers guy. But yeah, no.
Well, you may
love the
still be
department.
nerdy
You
numbers
gotta,
person, but you're still there.
a lot less so, honestly. It's sad how, maybe if I was still in my 20s, I could like pull off, getting back into a spreadsheet. It's not quite like riding a bike anymore. But yeah, it's something we're really, really proud of. And what else to say about this? And this all contributes directly to the service levels we're able to provide. Oh, sorry, I'm advancing as if I have control over this. Thank you so much. So now we'll get into kind of more of the nuts and bolts. We have 167 employees across 7 divisions. The divisions are taxpayer services, which is kind of like the it's kind of like the front window of the tax department. These are the staff that are answering the calls, that are, taking, that are processing the returns, and the processing the returns, like in terms of, when there's when there's something flagged as, unusual or, like something that needs a correction, they're the ones going in and doing that work. But they're really like the front door to the department and who you would interact with if you call the department. We also have the compliance division. That's the team of collectors and auditors that are, addressing the situations where they actually address a lot of the situations of voluntary compliance as well.
So it's in a tax gap, is that?
That's their
You
tax
would-
gap is their bread and butter.
It could be over 3 billion in
Yeah.
We've just collected what's owed.
Yeah, and we have increasingly taken like an educate and, like monitor going forward kind of approach for a lot of situations when something comes up from our compliance division, and it's really, a matter of confusion over the tax code. And then of course there are the intentional, bad actors, scofflaws who are, just trying to get an unfair advantage over, others and not paying their tax, and our compliance division deals with them as well. It's a tough job, really great team doing that work. We have a finance division that manages kind of like our internal finances as a department, but also does like the lift of processing returns, opening the mail, getting the checks. We have big scanner, cool software to do that. Anything that comes in on paper is kind of their wheelhouse. And that is a diminishing amount every year coming in on paper as we try to encourage electronic filing as much as possible. But, it's never going to go away completely. So finance division does a lot of work there. We have a legal division of lawyers doing lawyerly things, representing the department in appeals cases, things like that, but then also providing policy guidance or statutory guidance internally to staff in the operational divisions. We have the division of property valuation and review. They manage the current use program. They manage our municipal relationships. I'm sure you guys are aware that the property tax is actually collected at the municipal level, but we play a big role in facilitating the statewide education tax, holding the grand list, statewide grand list, and a lot of other municipal interactions.
Yes, Senator Clarkson.
Rebecca,
Yes.
the new Elizabeth, who is the new Elizabeth now? Who might the new
Yes.
head of current use?
Yeah. Michael, and I'm blanking on his last name, although I could see the name right.
Michael.
And I will say that Elizabeth is still around, kind of guiding in that transition.
No,
Michael
it's great.
Ramsey.
Michael?
Ramsey, yeah, and I'm happy to share his contact information afterwards.
Well, it's probably Michael Ramsey, right?
Yes,
Is he an SEY or SAY?
I think he's an SEY.
This is a program near and dear to many of us. She ran it for a very long time and had become her own institutional.
Yeah.
Which was great because the person who ran it before her also did it for a long time. So it's welcome. I look forward to meeting you.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. So that's PBR. There is our business implementation and improvement division, which I'll speak a little bit more about in a later slide when I talk about our IT system in general. But they're a group of department business users who support the other divisions in the department in using our VTax system, our big integrated tax system, which is another huge part of our success as a department, is having the tools to do the job. Which we can talk a little bit more about in a coming slide. And then lastly, I think I lost my finger there. Lastly, I believe is the Office of the Commissioner. That is the crew that I oversee that has our communications team. It has a couple policy analysts, lawyers who are focusing on policy interpretation for the department. And has our fiscal analysts like Jake Feldman, who's a common witness in the legislature, and another fiscal analyst on that team as well. And our principal assistant who does state house tracking and things like that. So And then as deputy, I focus on policy and legislation and kind of like that side of the house. We have a chief operating officer that does, kind of like more of the, I don't know, I would say classic deputy roles, like operational issues for the department, contracting, budget, all that stuff. That's Andrew Stein. So I feel very grateful for that leadership team, so I can keep doing the stuff I like in the policy world over here. Okay, so those are our divisions. We have a whopping 34 tax types that we administer. Please don't ask me to name them all. I couldn't name some of them, and I did bring a cheat sheet, so maybe you could. But 3 benefit programs I can name, that's current use, the property tax credit, and the renter credit. We bring in about 1.1 million in tax returns themselves. That's just, a stat to demonstrate how operational the department really is. That's like, a lot of just processing returns. So that's a tremendous amount. We bring in $2.75 billion in revenue annually. That's stats from FY24. Costs about 1 cent to collect $1 in revenue. That's like a pretty back of the envelope, taking our operating budget and dividing our revenue by that. But pretty proud of that stat. Feel like we do our work very efficiently. So we talked about our service levels and call volumes. We received 106,000 calls in 2024 with an average wait time of 1 minute and 23 seconds,
That's pretty fabulous.
It's pretty fabulous, super unprecedented in departments and agencies of revenue. So I'm thinking about our outgoing commissioner over at the Massachusetts DOR now, and probably wallowing in worse statistics than that. Maybe you can fix it. Just like, for example, of our efficiency last filing season, we were able to meet our goal of having 95% of refunds issued by June 1st and 82% issued within 30 days. That's great stats by our standards. So that's that. And we can move on to the next slide. I wanted to show this just to kind of like re-emphasize the importance of voluntary compliance and voluntary tax collections. You might look at this slide that shows only 2% of our revenue coming in from compliance activity and, draw the conclusion that like, it's not a very effective group, but that, just a scale, I didn't have more updated information, but in 2022, that's $55 million right there. And that number goes up every year. They're doing a magnificent job of continuing to use the tools that we have in our integrated tax system to design new discovery programs and to, deploy those tools thoughtfully. And as, we discussed earlier, this slice continues to grow while complaints about the department continue to decline, which is something that, I'm really proud of and I think says a lot about the team, just able to continue increasing efficiency and, maintain that service outcome. So what we don't see in this slide is that tax gap we were talking about. So you can kind of imagine another 14% slice being in there somewhere, but I think it kind of, drives home the point that it would be a lot to fit to squeeze another 14% out of compliance. It's really, we see this as, our service focus, bringing people into the voluntary fold through, outreach materials, like learning opportunities. Just different. We have a great outreach event every year, the tax symposium for tax preparers. Make sure, preparers are definitely part of the voluntary slice here. Things like that. So I only have one more slide. I would be remiss not to talk about our integrated tax system more in depth, VTax and my VTax. This system is awesome. It's like, I don't know if I should still say it's rare, but it is an example of a really successful state IT project. It was completed, fully implemented in 2017, and it started like the year I came in 2014. So it was a long building process, but we continue to make ongoing investments every year. We have annual patches. We do full version upgrades every few years. I mentioned our BID division, Business Implementation Improvement Division. They're really like the VTax support team. So they're a combination of internal business users, embedded developers from the contractor that built this out for us, and then also embedded AES staff at the department who help keep everything on the rails. And this system has all of our tax types, all 30, something I mentioned, big and small, and like soup to nuts. It's registration, it's filing, it's billing, it's compliance work happens in here. So a lot of like internal taxpayer services, like notes and adjustments in the system. It's really the reason why we're able to do what we do, and in terms of like achieving efficiency and service levels. And I think this system, like, really relates back to some of our, achieving success in some of our core values, because, you can't feel great about doing public service if you don't have tools to do the job. And I know, what I'm pleased to know that there's tech improvements that's going on across, colleagues, division or departments and agencies and state government, because it's just made such a massive change for the tax department since I joined 10 years ago to just have a robust system. So, when you do get a call from a frustrated taxpayer, you're never like, oh, I can't actually do this for you. It's like, we always can, it's really great. And it's I think a great recruitment tool for us too. When people come to the tax department, I can make a difference, with every phone call, with every, click. So we're very appreciative for that system. I also just want to, before closing, take the opportunity to say how appreciative I am for our collaborative relationship with the legislature. I know I'm not in this committee often, but especially in our money committees, it just really, I think, pays off in our success as an organization as well. Just talking about various policy initiatives. I feel like we have a lot of credibility when we say what's operationally possible for our department. And just really, appreciate having that credibility, because like even with our super powerful tools, excellent engaged staff, we can't pull everything off. And it's great to have the type of collaborative relationship with legislators where we can problem solve those things together. And when I talk to other department leaders around the country at these national events, that's certainly not always the case with their legislatures. So it's just something we're really grateful for. And I think we earn that credibility by trying to be really direct about when we have a policy or a political concern about something versus when we have like an operational or administrative concern. So, it's kind of my commitment to you guys as legislators. I always try to take that really seriously when I'm in this chair, and just appreciate the interest and support. It's a lot. So,
Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that you're here just kind of to give us an overview. So you're not really here to respond to any piece of legislation or anything that we have. But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the work that you do with municipalities and the classification system. And then I'm going to make a statement, which you don't need to respond to, which is I think we need to tax second homeowners at a higher rate than other property types. That's a strong stance I've made repeatedly. And I've attempted to bring bills forward to do that. However, the main pushback has been our municipalities are not set up at this time to do that type of classification or categorization. I might have my terminology mixed up. So I'm wondering if you could just describe how does it work now that you work with municipalities, and and then that's all I have, because I don't want to make you have to, that's a ways and means question past that point.
But Jill, has Jill Remick not been in touch with all of us about the rollout that they're doing with all the listers and the change in?
I haven't heard anything about this. So if there's something with listers on this too.
Thought we asked for a report from the tax.
We have got it.
Subject.
We've got it.
Well, that was my question, is have we gotten that yet, and where is it?
Yeah, that report was due December 15th. It was a Herculean effort, so certainly addresses the property classifications and second home specifically.
Yeah.
That report's pretty active in House Ways and Means right now, but
And it's on the website of finance.
yeah, but I'm happy to just circulate that to the.
If you-
That would be great. I think I may have found it, but
I'd say it has like a nice executive summary, but yeah, it's a big one. A lot of work went into that, but yeah. So I think that like there's a lot of good content in there covering this question, but I'm trying to like make sure I can do it justice and speak rather briefly to it. But I think, you identified some of the challenges in your posing of the question that, we at the tax department, we play a role in property tax administration, but ultimately, the lift is in the 250 plus municipalities, which, that makes a case for regionalization. And in the report, we're putting out some recommendations about how to, improve the ability to have standardized data across the state, have it centralized at the state, without, fully taking ownership of municipal grand lists out of municipal hands. It's, a delicate line to walk.
And she has some strong recommendations on that.
Yeah.
There's more to follow. It's another subject, but I actually had also a new idea inspired by my tax bill.
Inspired by tax billing.
Yeah, well, I love to do, we had some great times on Resume.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions, started with. Is there a significant number of the 167 employees who either have worked or, and I don't know which way it goes more easily, professional taxpayer preparation sort of thing? Do some of them start, for whatever, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but they're a professional.
Like a CPA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then come to the tax, or do they work for tax for a while and then transfer into the private sector?
Really interesting question. I actually don't know. I don't know about that latter question about tax department staff, like leaving to work in as like a CPA, for example. We actually don't have a ton of CPAs on staff. I know who they are. Our finance director, Sharon Azu, for a long time, ran the taxpayer services division. She was a CPA in New Jersey for a long time, so came with that expertise. So yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not really sure why. I mean, I think I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure if there's compensation differences to being in private practice as a CPA.
Yeah.
I assume so, but we have great benefits at the state, as you all
But you
know.
employ a lot of people who have economic backgrounds and
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. And
their economy.
there certainly are some, but it's by no means like a requirement for any of our positions. So much of Vermont's tax code is really specific to Vermont too. So yeah, there's an incredible amount of learning on the job. We have, part of that growth goal, we have in many of our job categories, we have steps like tax examiner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's a lot of growth and subject matter expertise on the job.
My other question had to do with new legislation affecting tax rates. So oftentimes in this building, there's a attraction for increasing taxes on our population in one way or another. But what sort of impact would there be? Because occasionally there are bills that exempt taxes from folks. Is that sort of just somebody else's business and you don't have to worry about it? Or does that affect the day-to-day thing? Sort of understanding what the new regulation or the new statute says and then getting caught up on it.
Yeah, no, those are all equally in our wheelhouse, exemptions, credits, deductions, and then also, new tax types or rate changes to raise revenue.
I think Senator Collmore needs a special edition of the tax expenditure report.
Oh, wow. Leather bound.
Brought to him, which it's one of my favorite report that we do.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't have much of an affinity for taxes and sitting and figuring numbers out.
Not many people do.
No, and that's why I really respect what you do, because I think it does take a certain, I don't know, personality or certainly traits within a personality to be able to go in every day and know somebody's going to call you and say, man, oh man, can you help me out? I don't want to pay this bill, sort of thing. And yet, as you have exhibited, with a smile on your face.
Yeah. Well, I think there's kind of the fun problem solving brains that are into this. How do you distill this incredibly complex piece of, policy into a form? How do you distill this incredibly complex form into a piece of guidance? How do you distill that into, a intelligible conversation with someone on the phone? There's that aspect, for me personally, and I know that this is true of others too, tax policy is really where the rubber meets the road for a lot of policy areas in state government. It's housing, environment, clean water, aging, income supports. Sometimes there's direct appropriations on things. Often people are doing things through the tax code, which means that my staff and I, especially folks in the policy shop, we have to become subject matter experts on each of those things, at a given moment in a given week. And it just keeps it really fresh and exciting, and then just from a public service, mindset, this department, I'd say, I think there might be some competitive spirit with DMV over this, but I think that we touch the most Vermonters.
Oh,
out there.
well,
sorry.
I think there's no question.
Oh, no question.
Because everyone pays sales tax. Everyone, absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
touch
the
more
indirect,
Vermonters
yeah.
than any other department.
Yeah, but like between property, income, yeah, the
No.
business taxes, like sales and
The
use.
roads are the only other possibility, but taxes and transportation, the Ts.
Yeah, and people, yeah, I mean, we have the most touch points, you're getting a form, you're sending a form back to us, you're getting mail, you're calling us, it's just every type of Vermonter is touched by our tax code in a number of ways. And
I will say, as we wrap this up, because we do have another
Yes.
issue to take up. Whenever I contacted Commissioner Bolio, I always got a response. He was very, very quick with a response, and I did appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know you'll be missing him in the office, but I wish
So do we.
him much success. He moved to, as you said,
Massachusetts, yeah.
Yes.
Great.
To an ever more expensive state.
Good.
He was concerned about it here.
Yeah.
One last question.
So I appreciate that you're gonna get us the report. I'm curious though, did that report focus, because I share Senator White's desire to have a more fine-tuned mechanism of property taxation
Yeah.
and the current two structured, it seems like a blunt object. So the report looked at that sort of municipal administration of the grand list, but did it also look at different categories of property taxation?
Yeah, we weighed in on that from our
Yeah.
department's perspective, and I think that would, absolutely willing to come back to this committee,
Okay.
Maybe with my colleague Jake Feldman and, talk about, especially any specific pieces of legislation this group's considering, but can talk about this type of
Well,
topic.
because that conversation occurred a lot in this committee last year, and that report, it kind of came out of work that we did in this committee.
Mhm.
And so I would like to sort of dig into it a little bit, because I do think the present mechanism is too blunt of only having the two categories.
Okay. Rebecca, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I hope
So
on your
good.
way back, you might
Bye,
stumble
bye,
across
Eric.
your work.
Thank you so much.
If we find it.
Yeah.
Where did you take your coat off? That's the key.
I'm still hoping it's in my office.
Oh,
And not on my, I don't know, not on the floor at home where I have two infant twins crawling around, putting everything around.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
The hearing situation happened to me last week, but I did end up finding it on the floor at home.
We'll keep our eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
safe travel back.
Great to see you.
So committee, we're gonna move to, we'll walk through. Sophie, please join us. S89, which was introduced a few days ago. This is an act relating to expanding survivor benefits. Our own Senator Mihawski is the lone sponsor of the bill. And, I'd like to walk through it with, Attorney Zadotny and, find out what this is all about. And, welcome. I think you already know everybody. Okay. So please.
Yes, so Sophie Zadani with the Office of Legislative Counsel, for the record. So this is an act relating to expanding survivor benefits. The bill proposes extending survivor benefits that are currently available to the survivors of firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and volunteer personnel killed in the line of duty or who pass away within 72 hours from the date of their last service in the line of duty, to 4 new categories. So it would be law enforcement officers, facility employees of the Department of Corrections, and Department of Corrections employees who provide direct security and treatment services to offenders under supervision in the community. 3 would be classified employees of the Family Services Division of the Department for Children and Families. And 4 would be classified employees of state-operated therapeutic community residences or inpatient psychiatric hospital units. So currently, survivors, the ones that are covered, again, firefighters, emergency personnel, they can apply to the Emergency Personnel Survivors Benefit Review Board for a payment of $80,000 from the state. And then the State Treasurer's Office oversees that program right now. So the short title of this would be Jessica's Law, which is named after Jessica Everhausen, who is a Rutland City police officer who was killed in the line of duty in July of 2023. Section 2 amends definitions, so it expands the definition of emergency personnel to include those 4 categories. So law enforcement officers, employees of the Department of Corrections, Family Services Division, employees of the Department for Children and Families, and employees of state-operated therapeutic community residences or inpatient psychiatric hospital units. It also amends the definition of the line of duty for firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and volunteer personnel. So the existing folks that are covered to include service in answers to a call, as well as going to and returning from a fire, emergency, or training drill. And then it adds line of duty definitions for law enforcement officers, which would cover them answering a complaint lodged with the department, responding to disorder, traveling to and from investigating or responding to a complaint or disorder, as well as service under department orders or in any other emergency. And then for the other three categories, the Department of Corrections, Family Services Division, and the folks working in therapeutic community residences and inpatient psychiatric hospital units, in the line of duty is defined as discharging their duties, their regular duties. And then section 3 provides that if the board decides to award a monetary benefit, the treasurer shall have up to 1 year from the date of receiving the claim to disburse the funds. And that reason has been that provision has been added because right now there's only limited funds available in the special fund from which these awards are paid out of. And so currently awaiting action by the General Assembly to appropriate additional funds, which I know was in the BAA, was to add $220,000 to that special fund, which would cover the current applications that are pending, but it would also provide 2 more award amounts. So they would have in their fund. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, but
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate this bill. I only have like one thing, which is Jessica's Law is a very common law name in New Hampshire for when you have to take snow off of the roof of your vehicle, and colloquially that is going to be I'm just saying Jessica's Law is really well known in our area. So, and I totally respect why you chose that. I mean, it makes,
I didn't actually choose that.
Yeah.
oh, just kidding. I guess I respect why anyone might choose that to reflect the individual who had been killed in the line of duty. I'm wondering, there was a DCF employee, a
Right.
social worker who
That would
was,
have been what I might have chosen had I chosen a name for this bill.
okay,
We can
that,
choose whatever name we want for this.
Or we could not name it at all.
Or we could,
Or we could
I
not name-
think more appropriately, not name it at all.
yeah, that was kind of my thought is,
I would agree.
Great. You know what?
That was not actually my choice. It was copied after a somewhat similar bill in the House and I missed it.
Oh,
So I was actually gonna advocate that we get rid of it.
we agree even before I had to say.
Great
anything.
minds that come.
But great. So that was the only thing I had. When we say survivor benefits, in section 3, the other thing was the e-board gives those out now.
No, it's managed by the treasurer's office.
So,
Hence the arrival of Ashland.
Yes. Yeah, so the treasurer's office oversees the fund that pays out the awards, but the money comes from the General Assembly unless there are donations or other special money that comes in. But historically, it's not a recurring appropriation because, fortunately, the fund hasn't been used that much. It's just most recently there have been a number of requests for the benefit. So Ashland is in a much better position to talk about that.
right. Well, thank you. That was my only.
So I just noted a few questions I have, and again, I am in support of the intent of this, I think, but this is a one-time payment then.
Yes.
Okay, that's the first question. How many additional, because we already have this for certain folks that we've outlined. How many employees would be affected? How many additional people, to the best of your knowledge, would this encompass or capture?
That is an excellent question and one that I'm not in a position to answer. I think the Department of Human,
Okay.
we'd have to say.
Can it even be answered? Because what we're asking is for you to project how many people are gonna die in the line of duty.
But how many people potentially, I guess, how
Yeah.
big is the pool?
A possibility. And
Right.
yeah, and it's volunteers too here. So it's a hard thing to.
Feel like a more use, at least from my perspective, to sort of get at what we're talking about, how many times might this be paid out, would be to perhaps look back over the last 5 years and see how many times one of the people in that would be covered by this bill had died. Because it does, while anyone could be covered, it only applies if they die in the line of duty.
Understood. I just thought it was a
I know.
Yeah, I think
good question.
getting that additional information about if this had been in place over the last, or even go a decade, how many times would it have been triggered?
I do know I did look at corrections officers and I think there were 3, but dating back to like 1935 or something, and
Yeah.
it goes back a long way.
Mm-hmm. And I know that we've had one DCF worker.
DCF worker.
So then my other question was, and it's rather carefully spelled out if you're in law enforcement, that you have to be responding to a call or in a firefighter's case, maybe a training. But if I worked for, I don't know, DCF or state operated therapeutic community residence, and I suffer a heart attack, but I'm discharging my duties at the time, does that count?
It would count, yes. And
Okay.
so, and if you, in terms of heart attacks and things, again, that it's occupation related illness, but it's tied to 72 hours afterwards. So you may, if you're a firefighter, you may die running into a building or whatever.
Right.
But you may also have an incident within 72 hours of the last time you were working, and that gets included as well.
Senator Bianchi.
How would you make the legal argument that the heart attack was because of my duties?
I believe the way that this is written is that it would apply if you die within 72 hours of your last shift of work.
But wouldn't it still hinge on being because of my duties? I mean,
Anxiety sometimes, the fire.
like, and I would support like narrowing the language if this is true, but if that's true, then I'd get a car accident on the way home.
It is, the definition is in the line of duty. So that's where the definition is.
Yeah.
It's in the line of duty. So, right.
Well, and I could understand if I'm a corrections worker who's been asked to work, 24-hour shifts, 70-hour weeks, and I get in a car accident, that could be made the argument that I fell asleep at the wheel because I've been overworked so much, and in that case could apply. But I think the key for me is that hinge on because of my work.
So I think that would ultimately be up to the board. So there's a board that looks at these and then they evaluate the claims, and they're the ones that make the determination as to whether or not to issue the award. So I think if there was a question, that would be up to the board to request additional information and make the determination as to whether it qualifies. But there isn't any language specifically in the current law or in the proposed law that would narrow it. The definition of in the line of duty is broad, and it's discharging, essentially if you're at work and die or within 72 hours of being at work, it would be covered.
And did you give us a number of what's currently in the fund?
It's negative.
Or-
No, I've
we can
seen
have
different
Ashley.
numbers, but Ashley is probably the better person.
Okay.
I've seen 135,000, but I know there's awards waiting to be paid out, and Ashley
Okay.
would be in a much better position.
It's close to empty.
Okay.
Given the awards that there are pending claims to be paid out, there isn't enough money in the fund right now to pay those out.
And we can have Ashley join us in just a second. Senator Bianchi.
Yeah, and my understanding, and this may be a better question for Ashland, but we did have a significant amount of discussion around this fund last year when we were talking about public works
Right.
employees.
Yes,
and-
because we included Becca's provision.
Yes, we did. And my understanding is the fund historically has been sort of back, like we put money in it when the money is needed. That has been the practice.
My understanding is that money has been put in at different points, but then, there may not be any claims, so it just sits there. So again, it's not a recurring appropriation. But now there is a request because there isn't enough money in the fund to pay the claims that are currently pending.
But I remember asking this in the discussion last year because I was concerned, like there should be more money in the fund. And what I was told is that the practice is that we put money in the fund when money is needed in the fund.
And I guess we can take testimony on the actual number, but you mentioned 80,000, I think. Is that a good number? Is it too little, too much?
I think
About right?
it was increased recently from
It was
50,000. It was 50 and it went down to 80,000. I don't know. I mean, within the last
Okay.
couple of years, I believe.
Did we take it up in 310? Anyway, we did take it up in this committee recently.
Okay.
I feel like
Not this, so.
this survivor benefit, no, I remember, I think you and I did that.
Could have
It
been,
might have been, and it will be interesting to see the last time we took it.
and I'm not suggesting one way or another. I'm just saying, it seems to me, again, every time you put a number in a statute,
Mhm.
it gets a little bit tricky because inflation takes over at some point and
Well, let's see the last.
what was
time.
a dollar once is
Yeah.
not anymore.
Let's see the last time
Yeah.
it was raised. That would be helpful.
Does anyone else have any questions for Attorney Zadati on the bill? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
I get, it's great to have you morning and afternoon. This is
Got
great.
ties in the side.
Gold letter.
No.
I'm not on your agenda but I'm here and I'm
Fine,
happy to.
we're glad you showed up. Do you know everybody on the committee?
I think that, I don't know if we had the occasion to meet.
Senator Larry Hart from Orange County.
Nice to meet you, Senator. Ashlyn Doyon from the Treasurer's Office.
So you've heard some of the questions that came up, and the floor is yours if you want to help us walk through this.
Yes, so, I'll sort of start, I don't have the language up yet, and there's a
Okay.
House bill that House General voted on yesterday.
Oh,
That started out as quite dissimilar from this one, but the version they passed out, the committee report, is more similar to this one now. So there, at the end of FY 24, to start, there was $185,000 of change in this fund. In December, we paid out one benefit in the amount of $80,000. There is remaining $105,000 change in the fund.
Mhm.
We have 2 pending applications, and we will be having that hearing in March. The general position of the treasurer's office on this idea of expanding the eligibility for the benefit is that we are okay with expanding the eligibility for the benefit. I want to make clear, and I think that the emergency board addition in this bill does so, that the legislature has to be committed to paying the benefits and replenishing the fund when there are applications. Current or historically, we have been filling the fund with one-time appropriations. Several times over the course of the past decade in my time at the treasurer's office has had additional carry forward that we have requested to go into the fund, and the legislature hasn't necessarily done that. So right now, because we have 2 pending applications, there's not sufficient money in the fund to pay both those benefits should they be approved later in March. And so the Senate passed version of the BAA included $220,000 of one-time funds to be deposited into the benefits fund. So if that goes through and survives conference committee and becomes law, there would be sufficient funds to pay the 2 pending benefits should they be approved and 2 other possible applications if we get them. So really, it's just, our position is just one of caution that if the benefit is expanded, recognize that there are additional future costs that may be incurred, with the caveat that these benefits are paid out in the event of a death. And so we really hope that we never have to make payments from
Sure.
this fund. The other sort of consideration that I think is really critical here is that the board that oversees the fund and that oversees the receives applications and makes the determination of whether or not to pay out the benefits is a board that meets internally only when an application is received. And so in December, when they met, they had not met for 6 years. And so in the statute or in whatever law that or bill that you contemplate, I hope that we can work together to make sure that the language is incredibly clear and incredibly precise, so that as little as possible is up to the board to determine. Ideally, the board makes like an up or down vote as to whether or not to approve the application. Ideally, it's really cut and dry as to whether or not an application that they receive is eligible for payment. So one of the things we've talked about internally in the treasurer's office when we're thinking about occupation-related illness, there's a lot of evidence that shows that firefighters, for example, that are currently eligible for this benefit have historically a series of occupation-related illnesses for which there's documented evidence year over year that's attributable to firefighting. In the example that Senator Vyhovsky talked about, if you, or was it you, someone said heart attack at like 72 hours after the shift. For some positions that are here, like social worker, corrections officer, etc., I'm not sure whether or not it's less clear to me whether or not that is affirmatively an occupation-related illness. And so if the legislature makes a determination that they want to cover that for these included categories, that's not the prerogative of the treasurer's office to decide. I'm just advocating that we make all of that really clear in the law so that we don't have a board that meets in a crisis situation in front of a family of survivors weighing this out and parsing it out. It's just a really hard and difficult task to ask them to do. I will say that and I probably need to confer with Sophie outside of committee on this. One of the things that I really like about Senator Vyhovsky's bill is that it retains the section that it's in section 3172C. It's sort of an order of operations that says if the board decides to award a monetary benefit, the benefit shall be paid to the surviving spouse, or if the emergency personnel had no spouse at the time of death, to the surviving child, or equally among children, if no child, then parent, or equally between surviving parents. The House passed version, or the House General passed version of this bill, it at the same time, my understanding it, because it was a strike all, that section is not in there in the same way. And at the same time, the House bill expanded some of these definitions. So my comment is the same about precision. If this body, it's not contemplated in this bill, but you'll probably receive the House bill. If the definitions of parent, child, domestic partner, etc., are added as they are done in the House bill, we need to make sure that the order of operations sort of prescription of who is eligible to claim the benefit first is aligned with those definitions in a really specific way. So that, again, there is like no interpretation needed on the part of the board. So those are my comments. There were questions, I guess, also about the size of the pool. I don't know how many law enforcement officers there are total in the state. I don't know how many corrections officers. Tom and the VSEA, they probably have more numbers on that. Social workers as well in the Family Services Division. I think that, I mean, there had not been a claim on this fund for 6 years. Now that we made the adjustment to the $80,000, and I think people became aware of it, we've had 3 claims in the past year. And so I think there are a couple of factors at play, right? You're expanding the pool. Hopefully nobody is killed in the line of duty related to their job. But it's also likely that if they are, you know, they're going to be more aware of this fund. There's an argument that possibly there will be more applications just because more attention and awareness is brought about by the program. So you might see more of an influx in applications at the beginning, which, I mean, that's not a problem for us as long as the money's there.
So as long as we appropriate it.
Senator Fox.
So when did we raise it to 80?
Last year.
Was it only, I thought we raised it in the bill that we did your expansion.
We took it out of ours because I lost that fight with death benefits for DPW workers. Specifically, I lost that.
You did it in the BAA.
Oh, we did it.
You did it in the BAA. We did a few different changes in the BAA last year because I was otherwise occupied at the end of the session. So we did a couple of pieces in the BAA that would have been better.
Got it. Maybe that's why we should get one.
You're working on big things.
I know. Well.
I appreciate your asking us for clarity, and obviously
Yeah.
that's very important. So you said it left House General?
Yeah, that was good. Yes,
Okay.
yesterday afternoon.
So it'll be on the floor at some point in that chamber
It was on the action
when
calendar.
we come back from
Oh.
town meeting.
It was on the actual
It's on the
calendar
action
tomorrow.
calendar for today.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so 3 o'clock, they haven't even night yet.
So I guess,
So it could be, I mean, I was told it would be after the break, but I mean, there's a possibility it could come up
Yeah.
tomorrow. I don't know.
and I'm guessing that Ashland's correct, it'll get referred here. Because we don't have sort of a general, well, we do, but I don't know
We
why,
actually
why
do.
would it not go to your committee then?
I don't know, you know, chat
did.
bloomer.
Yeah, death benefits has normally gone to you.
Okay,
We actually haven't had that many death benefits. So you know,
We
I
did
think
it in
it's
this committee last.
we did it and this came out of this committee.
Yeah, so, yeah, if it comes here, let's do it.
Let's
So I
have
don't-
a chat with Bloomer.
yeah, well, I only bring it up because I don't know whether we should go forward with this or wait for the House bill and then make the necessary changes. So we can have committee discussion at some point about which path forward seems more,
I don't know what's coming out of the house.
well, Ashland said it was pretty close.
It's on the
It's-
action calendar.
I can.
It's close. There are some significant differences. It's
Okay,
more,
that was
it
my
started
understanding.
out as just expanding to law enforcement. It evolved over the course of the committee
Okay.
session. There's one more point on this that I think is just important. You may, and I'm not an expert on this, but as you're considering, I would recommend keeping the amount of the benefit in statute. I think that that's important from a funding perspective.
Okay,
Because otherwise, how would we determine, how would the board determine how much someone is owed? There are so many factors, like, do you get more money if the person had young children? Do you get more,
And I'll
there
ask for more.
are all different types of things. One thing that a staff member in the treasurer's office mentioned to me today about expanding to other categories of state employees. There is a high quality life insurance option that is available to state employees that's volunteer enrollment, and the employee pays a small share of the premium and the state pays a pretty large share of the premium. And I don't really want to get into that because it's more HR's perspective, but you may want to just have a general understanding of how many of the employees in this category enroll in that life insurance, how much it's for, etc. I'm not saying that that takes the place of this, but it may help you understand how much someone's family could receive in the event, in totality in event of it.
Senator Bianski.
Do you have a sense of whether or not the people that are currently covered by this benefit have access to life insurance through their employment?
Well,
Well, the
anyone
state
who is a
employee.
state employee has access to life insurance through their employment, and it's twice one's salary, 3 times one's salary if it meets certain definitions of an accident. I'm not sure how many people pay for it.
Okay, I guess my question is, this death benefit already applies to some people, and I'm wondering if those people also have access to a life insurance policy. And what I hear you saying is some of those people are also state employees, and so yes,
Right,
but we don't have any idea if they're not state employees.
correct.
But we already provide this benefit to people who have access to that life insurance policy.
Not this specific benefit. We offer a benefit for which they can opt into that they have to pay a monthly premium for.
Okay, let me try to reframe the
Yeah,
question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. This death benefit, there are people who already can have access to it, and some of those people are state employees who would also have access to the life insurance policy that you are talking about.
Some of those people, but the people that are currently covered under statute, emergency personnel, it usually is like EMS providers and firefighters. So most of them that are covered under this benefit are not state employees under the current statute.
Okay, but some of them are.
Some of
And we don't know if those people that are currently covered might have access to life insurance.
correct.
Interesting point.
Well, we appreciate your shedding light on this for sure.
Yes, happy to come in again once you get farther down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Or when a new bill comes our way.
Is there anyone else that wants to take a seat, Tom? I don't want to put any pressure on you, Bill.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. When this bill has been discussed previously in previous incarnations, we've often had in members to testify about the significance of it. And I think perhaps it may make sense today, since we're just taking the law to coordinate with you and the committee to perhaps arrange testimony like that before, if it makes sense to you.
Yes, Senator.
Also, I don't think, now that we know there's a bill coming to us, and we will have this as an opportunity to work on it after crossover. Good,
That's true.
yes. So.
We can
don't
always
have to
add
get out.
provisions.
But
We can always add provisions to a bill that comes across from the.
absolutely. So yes, the bill is our oyster.
Perhaps better put than I could have done. Is anybody else here that wants to weigh in, or are we just kind of in a listening mode? Okay.
I'd just love to ask Ashley, I mean, you may not know the answer to this right away, but I'd love to know how it compares to other states. I'm sure other states have a survivor's benefit, so I would just love to know how ours compares to others.
I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that there are some federal benefits available for the categories contemplated. Law enforcement.
Yeah, I think the only one I think we know about was law enforcement. But if we, so this would be an interesting thing for us to appreciate also is what other states do and what other national things are provided for some of these categories.
Senator Gal?
The federal benefit is available to federal law enforcement or to law enforcement generally.
To law enforcement generally.
So there's already an additional benefit for law
It
enforcement.
may not be very big, but yes, it exists. I do know that.
I think it's quite large.
I mean, we're not insurance experts in the treasurer's office, but I will just say that an $80,000 death benefit in terms of order of magnitude is not very big at all. People, the life insurance recommendation, depending on your stage of life, is sometimes that you hold 10 times your annual salary in life insurance.
Right.
So,
And if we could, that's a good point. We should be looking at what our state life insurance plan is that some of these people have already gone into and compare to other states and compare it to.
and I'm not necessarily suggesting that this benefit be that amount. In fact, I'm certainly not suggesting that because that would be a lot of money to come up with on the fly if there were additional applications. But historically, the benefit has has served the purpose of being kind of a substantial token of the state's appreciation for the service and kind of little extra cushion for families who are suffering a great loss. Not necessarily to replace life insurance, but meant to be additive.
Well, we will discuss this later and further, as we indicated probably, but it does strike me that all our public servants that should be true of, and in some ways it should be extended to every public servant. But I know we're probably not going to do that, but it's rare to have people die in the line of duty and in the line of service. So anyway, everybody, I think the thing that we are most challenged with some of the tax exemptions across the hall is that there are many, many great forms of public service that people have committed their lives to, and they aren't all just right here. And
I do have a couple of other.
Sure,
that would be
please.
helpful. So the Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, which is a federal death benefit, I believe was $448,575.
448?
Yeah,
Jeez.
for eligible deaths occurring after October 1st, 2024, and that's through the Department of Justice.
And that's for any law enforcement officer.
Yeah, the federal benefit.
Wow. Don't seem to.
Yeah, so it's local, state, tribal, federal public safety agencies and national organizations. The Public Safety Officers Benefits Program provides death and education benefits to survivors of fallen law enforcement officers, firefighters and other first responders, and disability benefits to officers catastrophically injured in the line of duty. And then you had asked about other states. My understanding is that Chris Ford, who was the president of the Vermont Police Association, previously testified, not this session, but a previous session, And so this was a recollection of a representative as to what the previous testimony had been. So I'm not, these are not numbers to take to the bank, but $100,000 benefit in Maine and New Hampshire, $300,000 in Massachusetts, $100,000 in Connecticut, and $147,000 in Rhode Island. But again, those were just someone's recollection of what someone had previously testified to.
Okay,
So
we'll find the current ones because they may all. Thank you.
Thank you, so.
Wow, so good.
Okay, well,
Did her homework.
I'm glad we took this bill up and, more to come, as I said.
And we learn what's happening.
Let's take a 15-minute break and we'll be back with, S23.